What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Dr. Curtis O's YouTube channel. Before we get started, I wanted to apologize for one thing. Last week I was supposed to have done this Q&A. However, I lost a family friend to COVID. Because of that, I was not in the right mindset to do the Q&A, get those questions that y'all had answered. So I wanted to kind of just clear the air from that point of view and then go from there. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I told y'all before, this would be a Q&A on medical school and residency interviews. So I've compiled a lot of questions that y'all had for me, about 24 questions or so that we're gonna go through. Some of these, since there's so many of them, a few of these we're probably gonna do rapid fire. So let's go ahead and get started. But before we get started, make sure if y'all enjoy the content I'm providing, please hit that like button, subscribe down below, and leave a comment. And I promise I'll get back to y'all. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started with this Q&A. So the very first question that I got was, did you think school prepared you well for class exams in step 1, or did you have to use a lot of outside material? So I felt that school did prepare me well. I took a lot of notes during classes, whether they were in person or whether they were via video. So I felt like they did a good job of going over content that I felt that I needed for step 1. I also did use material because you just never know. And so although I took a lot of notes and all of that to take my exams during school, I did use quite a bit of outside material to get through the content that was needed so that I could excel and do well on step 1. So number 2 is studying tips, please. So everybody's different. Everybody has your own style. Everybody learns a certain way. Some people are visual learners. Some people need groups. Some people can study by their own. I thought I was a person that could study by their own. For the most part, I was not. I was someone who was a visual learner, and I was someone who needed a tutor. I needed to be in a tutorial type classroom in order to get the information needed to make sense so that I could apply those to the test. So everybody's different. For me personally, again, I use groups, I use visuals, but you may not be that way. You may be the type that can just study on their own. So everybody's different. So choose what's best for you. But for me personally, it was tutorials, it was tutors, and it was visuals. All right, so number 3 is, do you recommend post-bac programs for individuals who have an amazing master's program GPA, but have a terrible GPA in their undergraduate college career? So what a post-bac program is post-bac program is where you take pretty much undergrad courses again, or a higher level undergraduate course. And for medical school, as a lot of people may know, science GPA is weighted way more than your overall GPA for college. So if you did not do well on your science classes during your college career, during your 4 years in college, then I highly recommend doing a post-bac program to boost up your science GPA, to give yourself every chance to get into medical school. So that's what I would have did. Had I not got into medical school in the Caribbeans, I probably would have done that, because if you've seen my previous videos, I discussed me not doing well in my science classes, and so therefore my science GPA was not the best. So if you feel that you're in that boat, if you feel like your science GPA is not where it needs to be, then I would recommend that over a master's program. All right, so number 4 is, would you recommend the Caribbean route, especially after step 1 has now become pass or fail? I was told by a few ER docs and some hospitalists to steer clear of Caribbean medical schools. All right, before I answer this question, I want to get something off my chest, because I've heard this quite a bit since I've went the whole medicine route. And this is this whole thing about steering clear from Caribbean medical schools. That's bogus. If they have not been through the Caribbean medical school route, then please take whatever they say with a grain of salt, because a lot of that stuff is not true. Obviously, if you're trying to get into neurosurgery, ophthalmology, and things like that, it does become more difficult to get into those fields for residency, but it's not impossible. And again, if you've seen my previous videos, I have discussed how high the passing rate is, how high the residency match rate is for first time appliers, how high it is to get in. So please do not listen to a lot of doctors out there who've never been the Caribbean route, who've never been to a Caribbean medical school. Because again, like a lot of things, there's a lot of information out there that is not true, and that is one of them. So please take everything with a grain of salt, and I'll leave it at that. Now, to get into your questions about step 1, would I recommend that even with it becoming pass and fail? So if you don't know, in medical school now, they have made step one pass or fail. Instead of you having a score that they would give you whether you passed or failed. And so it's tough to answer that question, because I think this is going to be the first year where this has happened. But I would say this: for neurosurgeons, ortho docs, ophthalmologists, and fields like that are highly competitive to get into residency, I think it does hurt Caribbean medical students, because you have to prove yourself to a lot of these residency programs, and the way you prove yourself is how well you did on step one. So with making it pass or fail, it does level out the playing field with you and US grads, but I think it does hurt those in certain fields, ophthalmology, ortho, and fields like that, even general surgery. But fields such as internal medicine, emergency medicine, psych, family, OB-GYN, fields like that, I think you'll be just fine. Especially with the two Caribbean medical schools that are pretty much much better than the other ones. I would say you'll be just fine. St. George and Ross. If you've applied to either one, if you got into those schools, I think you'll do just fine, as long as you're not shooting for the stars. But again, it's not impossible. It's just that it will probably be much tougher because you're not able to prove yourself with a high step one score. All right, so number 5 is, I was just wondering, what advice would you give someone who just finished their undergraduate biomedicine degree with a good GPA and looking to resit for the MCAT? Look for a job with a hospital experience, do an honors year, or just focus on MCAT study entirely? In terms of hospital experience, I think it's good. It's good to be able to put yourself in a situation, kind of have an idea if this is for you. But honestly, I don't feel as if hospital experience is weighted much getting into medical school. All those hours that people put in, that's great. It fluffs up your resume, fluffs up your portfolio. But the thing that really matters trying to get into medical school is GPA, more specifically the science GPA, as well as your MCAT scores. So to answer your question, I would really focus on the MCAT, studying for that extremely hard, doing everything that you can to prepare yourself, and take the MCAT. If you can squeeze in doing some hospital work, shadowing doctors, so on and so forth, by all means do that. I definitely don't want to push you away from doing that, but I think you should focus most of your attention on studying that MCAT, studying for the MCAT. That way you're ready for that, because that is what really matters most, that and your science GPA. Right. So question number 6 is, how did you study for MERT? What were your studying techniques, and were you able to carry them into your time at Ross? So as I discussed in the previous video, MERT was a program that I had to do to pretty much prove myself that I was ready for medical school. And so I took a pre-program right before medical school, and for which I had to pass in order to get into medical school. And that was through Ross, and that was located in Miami at the time. So the study techniques I used at that time was, I had 2 roommates, and again, I am a tutorials, tutor type person, as well as a visual learner. But at that time, I had 2 roommates, and we had actually studied together. We weren't BSing around. We weren't joking. We were actually very serious about our work. So we did a lot of group sessions, and that really helped kind of bounce ideas off of each other, explain things so things made sense. Because again, in medical school, you can do this in college where you can just memorize things and then just take an exam. In medical school, it has to make sense. And so being able to put 2 and 2 together, put 2 plus 2 to equal 4, was very, very big in medical school. And so for me personally, I use groups. That is what really got me through that program. And then I was able to kind of take that into Ross in medical school, but then I did that in the way of tutoring, where I actually had tutors at that point in time, because in MERT we did not have tutors. In medical school we did. So group sessions and tutorial was what propelled me through. Once I understood how to study, I was then able to study a lot on my own where it made sense, and I knew how to study and apply those things to a test. So MERT program is how, the group studying is how I did through the MERT program, and I was able to again apply that at Ross. So number 7 is, do you have tips for IMGs? How many observerships do you recommend, and what are my odds to land into neuro residency? So tips wise, number one on that list is hunger. You have got to be extremely hungry. For IMGs, we already looked at as an inferior graduate to US grads. Although it may not be true, that's how we are perceived, and I can't slice it any other way. So hungry is what's going to drive you from beginning to end. So you have to be hungry, you have to want it, and you have to be confident that you can get it. That is number one. Number two is obviously killing your MCAT scores. I mean, that is pretty self-explanatory. If you don't have good step ones, well, now that things have changed and there's no longer scores, it's actually pass or fail. But killing step two, and proving yourself during your clinical rotations and making sure that you network with attendings, other residents at those hospitals that you're doing your clinicals at. I think that's gonna be very, very big for you, because a lot of times it's not what you know, it's who you know. So being able to pass step one and then prove yourself during clinicals and making sure that you network and meet with program directors and residents and all of that so that they see who you are and see your work ethic, I think it's gonna be very, very big for IMGs, especially since there's no more getting a score of 220 or a score of 240 or a score of 190. There's no more of that. So you really have to prove yourself in person. So I think that's the biggest two things that I would say. Obviously, when it comes to applying for residency, the thing that I did, like I explained in my previous videos, is when you're sending off emails to different programs, personalize them. Put the program director's name, put the residency coordinator, put anybody that you can think of. If you have the email address, send that to them. You're gonna get you're not gonna get a lot of responses back, but the ones that you get is what's gonna change it for you. Because all you need is one. All you need is one program to believe in you. So doing those three things, I think, is big. Obviously study, but again, that's self-explanatory. But please just be hungry. Prove yourself when it comes to clinical rotations and network. And then also when it comes to residency interviews, send out those messages. If you apply to 100 different programs, send out 100 emails. And then whoever returns, it may be that break that you get, that may be the interview that you get, and then it's a wrap. It's over. You got what you wanted. Question number 8 is, did you have to take out a lot of loans to go to medical school at Ross? If so, are the payments you make impacting, or have they impacted your ability to buy a house, buy cars, or make any of the big financial decisions? All right, so for me personally, I had to take out a lot of loans. I pretty much maxed out on my loans during my 4 years at Ross. One of the cons of going to a Caribbean medical school is that they're extremely expensive compared to US schools. So did that impact me? It did impact me because it obviously makes you think twice about doing certain things because you have so much loans to pay back. But there are a lot of people that are living normal lives even with the amount of loans that people have piled up over their 4 years spent in medical school. And then when you tack on college and all of that, obviously it can get extremely high. So personally for me, it did not impact me. I thought twice about when I did certain things, but I'm also a go-getter. I hustle. And so I actually work a lot extra compared to what my counterparts do. So it did not impact me. I was able to buy the house that I wanted. I was able to get the cars that I wanted. But obviously you have to be very strategic about how you do things. So yes, the loans can be quite high. Yes, I took out a lot, but no, it did not impact me compared to others. Some people's loans may be higher than mine. Some people have college loans and this and that. I didn't have anything but my medical school loans. So yes, mine were extremely high, but I was able to sit down, strategically plan what I wanted to do and how much I was gonna have to pay back. That way I was able to live a normal life. And again, a lot of doctors are able to buy cars and houses and all those things. You just gotta be smart about it. So question number 9 is, I'm currently working to get into medical school. What advice would you give someone with a lower than average GPA? So this goes back to the other question that was asked about post-bac programs. If you have a chance to do a post-bac program, I think that's huge because again, science GPAs mean a lot. They mean a lot to medical schools. They want to make sure that when they accept you, you're able to go through medical school, pass, and get into residency and not fail out. So if you have a lower than average GPA, and more specifically your science GPA, then I would really look into doing a post-bac program because I think those are big. A lot of of my classmates, former classmates in medical school and in residency, did post-bac programs to boost up their science GPA. And in doing that, it gave them every chance to get into medical school. And they did. They got through residency, and now they're physicians. All right, so question number 10 is a loaded question. Whoever sent me question number 10, you were sneaky. You put like 10 questions in one. So for this particular question, it's gonna be rapid fire because I wanna be able to get through all of the questions that y'all gave me. And someone watching this video gave me like 10 questions in one. So let's do rapid fire for this one. How many hours do Caribbean schools study per day? Everybody's different. It's hard for me to really answer that. Some people are able to study something, remember it after the first time and be done with it. Some people needed a lot more time. So it really depends. Everybody's different. So it's really hard for me to give you an answer and it'd be completely accurate. Number 2, are there any days off? Of course, there's days off. There's days off while you're on the island. After doing 4 months, which is a semester, before you move on to the second semester, you get about a 2-3 week break. So a lot of people go back home to the States, enjoy time with their family and friends, and then come back. Number 3 is, how are tests designed? I heard they are made super hard to weed people out and then grade on a curve. At least at St. George does. So tests are designed just like any other test, honestly. I really didn't talk with anybody who went to a US medical school in terms of how their tests were. But the tests back then composed of different subjects: microbiology, pharmacology, organic chem. Every subject you probably think of was on one particular exam. However, they were organ-based. They would focus on cardiology first, and then do pulmonology and then do GI. And so these tests were organ-based so that you could just focus on one organ at any given time, study for those, and take the test. All right, so number 4 on the loaded question list, whoever you are, ask how many people start with your class and actually wound up graduating. So as I stated in a previous video, at Ross we had approximately, call it 500 students, give or take. By the time it was all said and done, I think it was probably around 250 to 300. Don't quote me on that, but we lost a lot of students. And just like with any program, at least with Ross, St. George is probably the same way. It was a weed out process, especially with that very first semester. So yeah, 500, cut it in half, about 250, maybe 300, at most 350. All right, number 5 is, do loans cover all costs of living? Is there leftovers or do you need more? So if you take out the max loans for medical school, it will cover all of that. And then you'll still have some to take care of food and whatever else that you may need. You're not gonna be able to go out and go bottle popping and all of that, or get sections at the club, but you'll definitely have what you need to get through medical school. There's no two ways about that. So number 6 appears to be a piggyback off of number 5, especially to travel for rotations, hotels, cars, food, etc. Your loans will cover that. Obviously, like again, you'll have some money left over, but you're not gonna be able to go splurging and do all those things. So if you save right, then yes, you can take care of hotels, take care of flights and all those things needed for residency interviews, being able to go back home, things like that. And they'll definitely take care of food. Cars is one thing. So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by cars, but it'll obviously take care of gas. Number 7, do you have to dress professional on the island or regular clothes? So some people wore professional clothes. I was not one of those. I needed to be comfortable because when you're on the island, all you're doing is studying. So very few people wore professional clothes all the time, but most of us were comfortable. For me, if you went to Ross with me, you know what I was rocking. I had a baseball cap on, I had a tee on, I had shorts, my Jordan sandals, and my socks. Every single day, hat or headband, shorts, socks, sandals. I was about as comfortable as can be, because the last thing I want to worry about is how good I'm going to look or how professional I'm going to look when pretty much all you're doing in medical school is study, at least for the first 2 years. So number 8 is, what happens when you need to see a doctor and dentist? How is that cost covered? All right, so from a dentist point of view, I'm not necessarily sure. I did not see a dentist while I was on the island or during clinicals. I took care of myself, obviously, okay? So let's not say that I get my teeth cleaned. But in terms of how that works, you obviously get insurance, I believe, through medical school, and I can't remember exactly. I could be wrong. It's been a while. People went to see their doctors and dentists quite a bit during school, and I don't think they had any problems. I haven't heard any horror stories or bad stories of not being able to see a doctor or not being able to see a dentist. On the island is one thing I can't really tell you how it is on the island, but when you get back to the States, I don't think it was a problem at all. And number 9, the last question on this loaded question list, whoever you are, I hope this makes you happy. How do you get all your basic needs like deodorant, toothpaste, etc.? Are they expensive? So on my previous video, again, what I discussed was before we started medical school, we sent a lot of our stuff in barrels, a lot of our supplies, things like this, deodorant, soap, things like that with us, so that when they shipped those barrels, you had everything that you needed on the island. So you pretty much kind of overpacked to make sure that you weren't short. And if you were, there was grocery stores all around. I mean, not all around, but there was grocery stores around where you could get those items. And no, they were not expensive. And so if you ran out, or you were about to run out during your break after those 4 months, when the semester ended, you can go back home, reload, and then bring it back on the island. All right, so number 11 is, I'm in pharmacology right now. How do you learn all of these drugs? Great question. I don't know. No, but pharmacology is one of those topics where, or one of those classes where it was just a lot of memorization. If there was any subject in medical school where it took nothing but memorization, or a majority of memorization, it was pharmacology. Yes, you have to learn certain things that had to make sense in order for you to understand what was going on, but for the most part, it was just memorizing. So whether it was just you just kind of memorizing, looking at something 1,000 times and hopefully that it sticks, or it was using one of these slogans or phrases or things that rhymed in order for you to remember a particular drug. But that's tough. I mean, that is a tough question. That's a very tough subject. God bless you. Good luck. All right, so number 12 is, I'm going back to school at the age of 39. Did you see any older students in medical school, or know any that went later in life? Most definitely. During medical school, we definitely had students that were in their late 30s. We had some students that were in their early 40s. So it can be done. We've seen it done. When I was in residency, one of my good friends during residency was pushing on 50. Hopefully he's not watching this video, and hopefully I didn't add a few years on his life, but he was close to 50. So yes, it's been done. So regardless of age, whether you're 24, you're 39, you're 45, if you want to, go get it. Age shouldn't stop you. And like that old saying goes, age ain't nothing but a number. So number 13 is, when you took step 1, were you not able to get accommodations because of your medical condition? All right, so as a lot of people probably know, if you haven't watched my videos, is I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis a few months before step 1. And personally for me, Ross gave me the chance to take some time off, take step 1, which would push me back and not graduate with my class, but graduate with the next class. But for me personally, I was really stubborn. Everything they were saying was going through one ear and out the other. I just wanted to take step 1. So they were going to accommodate me by letting me sit out for a little bit, get myself together, get my condition under control, and then take step 1. So they definitely were going to accommodate me. There's no two ways about that. I really didn't want to do what they had asked me for me to do. I wanted to do things on my own terms. Whether that was right or wrong, that's a topic for a different video. Number 14 is, what is your best study tips, especially the tips you used in college to raise that GPA up? All right, so as a lot of people know, I had a 1.8 GPA my freshman year in college. So I went through it. I had to work my ass off to get my GPA up to where I was competitive as possible to be able to apply for medical school. The number 1 tip I would give off bat is, you have to be open. You cannot let your ego get ahead. You cannot let your ego stop you from doing the things that are needed in order for you to get to where you want to get to. A lot of people don't want to ask for help. A lot of people feel like if they go see their professor or go to tutoring classes and things like that, it makes them look weak. It does not make you look weak. I think it makes you look stronger that you are willing to go get help. So if you studying by yourself is not working, go seek help. That is number 1. Be open to all of the options that are available for you in order for you to do well. Number 2 is, surround yourself with positive people. A lot of people want to see you fall. A lot of people want to see you fail. And so surrounding yourself with, whether it's family or friends or whoever it is, to make sure that they have your best interest at heart is huge. Because a lot of times you could feel like you're alone. You could feel like This is not for me. No one understands where I'm coming from, or everybody's against me. So surrounding yourself with positive people, if you're able to, I think is big. And being confident in yourself, being confident that you can do this. As long as you put the work in, if you really, really want it, you can get it. It may take you more years than you expected it to, but if you want it, you can get it. So being confident in yourself, being humble and open-minded to different options, as well as surrounding yourself with the right people, I think are the biggest tips that I can share with someone. So number 15 is, does myasthenia gravis affect you now while practicing? Fortunately for me, it does not affect me. I still have some residual effects such as muscle fatigue, more specifically of the neck, but the ptosis of the eyes, which is drooping of the eyelids, the double vision, the respiratory issues, things like that, have pretty much resolved. But obviously with me, I'm big on health, lifestyle modifications, dieting, exercises, and things like that, and I feel like that's helped me as well, because personally for me, I take steroids, and those who know about steroids, that puts you at risk for diabetes. So taking care of my body to make sure I don't put myself at risk for diabetes and things like that have also helped me in the long run. Number 16 is, Dr. O, in regards to emergency medicine, why didn't you consider it? And do you think we could see some emergency medicine on the channel? Most definitely. To answer your second question first, I plan on having emergency medicine, orthopedics, cardiology, GI, every specialty that I could possibly get on the channel, I will get, so that y'all can have all the information that y'all need to be able to make the decision that's best for y'all. And why didn't I consider emergency medicine? I actually did. That was actually second on my list of specialties that I wanted to go into. I didn't go into them in my previous videos. I actually forgot to bring it up. But I actually really did think about doing that. I applied to a few programs. I interviewed at one actually. But I think at the end of the day, I didn't want to deal with OB-GYN. I didn't want to have to deal with pediatrics, things like that. And then on top of that, emergency medicine, you pretty much, when you clock in, you stay there for your 10, 12 hours, however many hours you're supposed to be there. For IM, you have some leeway, you have some time to kind of get away, go run a few errands, come back if you need be. So yes, I did consider it, and that was a strong number 2, but I ultimately didn't choose that. All right, so number 17 is, how do you manage myasthenia gravis now? I know you work long shifts several days in a row. So for those that know about hospital medicine, typically the shifts are 7 days on, 7 days off. That's probably about 95% of how hospitalists are across the country. And if you know me, you know that I work a lot of shifts in a row. I just don't do 7. I'll do 10. I'll do 11 in a row. Take 3 days off and do it again. So personally for me, the reason why I'm able to get through these shifts, again, I only have residual effects from myasthenia gravis, but I think the biggest thing for me is I take care of myself. I get proper sleep, I work out, I eat healthy. Those things right there can go a long way. We take those things for granted a lot. But personally for me, that is a big part of what I do, and I think that has helped me tremendously to be able to get through these long hours and these long stretches of days that I do at the hospital. Number 18, do you mind including in future videos tips and helpful resources you use to prepare for step 1 and step 2? All right, so to add on to what I've already discussed earlier in this video is, for me personally, I don't remember all the resources that I used in terms of books and things like that, but one that I used primarily that got me through, that was my saving grace, was the first aid book, first aid step 1 book. And I feel like probably 95 to 99% of students, regardless if it's US grad or Caribbean grad, use the first aid book. So I would say definitely get that. And then obviously USMLE Q Bank was also big. I went through that bank, I don't know how many times over, 2 or 3 times. Each question, did it 2 or 3 times. Looked at why questions were not just right, but why they were wrong. I think that was the biggest part, is figuring out why certain choices were wrong to a particular question. So the Q Bank and first aid was what got me through. Obviously it was Kaplan books. I've used that sparingly through my time. But I think those 2 were the biggest for me, but everybody's different. All right, so number 19 is, why did you choose to go the Caribbean path instead of the master's program path to become a doctor? So the reason why is because I got accepted into medical school the first time around, although it was still Caribbean medical school. Had I not got into Caribbean medical school, I probably would have did post-bac program or master's, probably post-bac program because of what my science GPA was at the time. But that's why I didn't choose the master's program route, because I got accepted the first time around. But had I not, it would have been a master's program or post-bac, but most likely the latter. All right, so number 20 is, would you recommend post-bac programs for those who don't have typical undergraduate degrees and also had medical school aspirations later in their undergrad career? Yes. Again, post-bac programs are pretty much taking undergrad courses again, and therefore getting your science GPA up. So I would highly recommend doing that, just so that you can get that science GPA that you need in order for medical schools to take you serious. So most definitely, if you have a chance to do a post-bac program, do it, especially if your science GPA is not where it needs to be. So number 21 is, why did you choose internal medicine instead of GI or cardiology? And would you consider moving into other specialties? So I plan on doing a residency video coming up in the next couple of 2 or 3 videos. But to answer your question now, the reason why I didn't choose GI or cardiology is because I'm not a big outpatient medicine person. And I despise clinics. That's just me. I was not a big fan of those. I prefer to be in the hospital where that's a little bit more fast paced. So that was a big reason why. Another reason why is that 7 on, 7 off schedule was very, very big for me. That really was attractive. Being able to do a lot of things on the outside, things outside of medicine, and not having to go to clinics, being able to be out for 7 days straight and not have to go to or answer phone calls or pages or things like that was just so attractive. And I'm a huge family person, and so I wanted that time off. And so I think that was probably the biggest reason why I didn't choose cardiology or GI. And surprisingly, actually, those were the 2 fields that I actually thought about. GI was number 2 on my list of things that I thought about doing. But at the end of the day, lifestyle and not doing clinics was just big for me. It might sound, cheesy or whatever you want to call it, but for me, I despise clinics, man. I couldn't do it. For me, I just could not go to clinics. Number 22, I was wondering, can one apply to 2 different specialties for residency? For example, surgery and psychiatry. Great question. Very good question. This was a question that came about a lot with a lot of students who were applying for a residency. The reason why this would come up a lot was because certain students might not have had the might not have had the step 1 and step 2 scores that they needed in order to get into a particular field. So they pretty much had a plan B. So if you're applying for family medicine and internal medicine, for instance, that is okay. That is okay to do because they are similar fields. But when you apply for general surgery and then you apply for family medicine, or you apply for general surgery and you apply for psychiatry, from what I've heard, it doesn't necessarily look good. It feels like you're hedging your bet, so to speak. And so from my residency coordinator that I had at my residency program, I asked her that question, and it does not look good to them. So if you want to apply for family and internal, family and psych, internal and psych, things like that, then you're okay. But when you apply for 2 different fields on 2 different spectrums of medicine, I'm not saying that you can't get in, but from what I heard, it's not a good look. It's not the best look. Number 23 is, do you plan on staying in internal medicine or looking to specialize later? So for me personally, I don't plan on specializing. I have no intention of doing so. In the chance of me doing that, I probably have a better chance of getting struck by lightning before I even do that. Reason being is I'm so far into life now where I have a house, I have these things, and obviously going back into doing a specialty is going to significantly decrease your salary. That shouldn't be the reason why you do it, but that is a reason. That's one that you should consider. But for me, I'm happy. I'm happy with the field I'm in. I'm happy with my life. I'm happy with the money that I make. So I'm okay with doing that. I personally just cannot go back to the grind of studying, putting in those long hours, attending, and all those things. That's just not for me right now and won't ever be. So that is the reason why I will likely not ever, no, it's not likely not ever, I will never specialize. But I'll say this though, since I've got out of residency, I have had colleagues who have went back to school, whether it was palliative medicine or endocrinology, whatever the case is. And they did extremely well. I think having that internal medicine, that hospitalist background or internal medicine background on your resume when you apply for fellowships is actually huge. I think they really take that into consideration because they know that you know your stuff when it comes to internal medicine. So if you really want to do that, by all means do that. It will look good when you apply for fellowship, but for me, it's just not for me. All right, so number 24 is who should attend post-bac programs? I see this is a very popular question. Now, this is similar to other questions that I've been asked already that we discussed earlier in this video. Really, for me, there's a set of people that should definitely consider it. And it's those who have low science GPAs. Science GPA is weighted so heavily with these medical schools. And so not having a good science GPA and applying is not the best look. It's not going to give yourself every chance possible to get in. So if you're one of those who has a low science GPA, I highly suggest doing a program such as a post-bac to boost up your GPA. Therefore, you can now give yourself a chance to get into medical school. So we're down to our last question, number 25. And that question is, so how did you end up back in Houston? So as a lot of people know, Houston is home for me. And family is everything for me. So for me personally, one of my biggest goals was to come back to Houston. I did not want to be in any other state, any other city to live the rest of my life in, other than being in Houston. So I did everything that was necessary to get myself back here. So obviously, I left Houston at the age of 18 to go to college. Then I went to Ross in the Caribbean, did clinical rotations, on the East Coast before coming back to Texas, where I did my residency in Tyler, Longview, East Texas, before I come back to Houston. But there was no way that I was not coming back. I was gung-ho, I was anal about coming back, and that's why I made it back here, is because that was my choosing. That is what I wanted to do, because family and friends is everything to me. And that's what makes me happy. All right, so that's it, everybody. I appreciate all of the questions that I got over the last 3 videos. There were some great questions. All of them were great, to be quite honest with you. Even that loaded question that had 10 in 1, whoever you are, I'm gonna find you. No, I'm joking. But anyways, I hope it was very informative. I hope the information that I gave y'all will give y'all every chance to make the decision that's best for you, for y'all. And so yeah, again, if you like the information I provided, if you like the content I provided, please hit that like button. You know what to do. Subscribe, leave a comment. If I did not answer one of your questions during this Q&A, please leave it down below. I'll be happy to answer it then. So y'all take care and God bless.